Okay, and we are COMP2068, and it's week 4, lesson 4, part 3, and we're going to talk about TypeScript in a second. But before we do that, what I'd like to do with you is set up a boilerplate for Create Jas, because we're going to be using Create Jas over and over again. And instead of doing all this stuff again and again and again, I want to create a basic boilerplate with you so we can access that for our new projects, as opposed to just doing this from scratch every time, because it becomes a little bit cumbersome for us to do the same things. And we're going to do it one last time, and this will be one of the last times we create a boilerplate for a while. We might modify it and make a new one afterwards, but this will be almost like our base template that we're going to use for Create Jas going forward, because we need to do some more stuff about Create Jas today and then next week again before you get your assignment number 2. Okay, so let's go back over here to this Visual Studio stuff. I'm going to close down my solution again and create a new one. I'm going to go File, New Project, and I'm going to go into Web, a new web project. And down here, I'm going to change the name of this project to say COMP2068-Create Jas Boilerplate. So you know it's for you. Now there's another one on there for another class I'm doing, but it's different than yours. Okay, so let's use this one. So now I need a Git repository. That's cool. I also probably should create a online repository for this class, this thing that I'm doing. So I'll do the same thing. I'll go to GitHub, and inside GitHub I'll create a new repository, and I'm going to call it, of course, COMP2068 Create Jas. Not a demo this time. In capitals. Create Jas Boilerplate. Okay, big long name. COMP2068 Create Jas Boilerplate. If you see that, that's the one that I want you to use to sync up with mine if yours has issues, and yours may have issues after this. We'll talk about the issues, and I know about them because we have some items we have to address. Okay, so I've created my repository. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to go back over to my Team Explorer, and inside my Team Explorer I'm going to go Home. I'm going to go Changes, and again in here I'm going to say created initial commit, let's say, for project base. Okay, commit. And I'm going to go to my home again. I'm going to go to unsync commits and put in my URL. Right? And I'm going to say publish. Now I'm connected up with GitHub. I don't need to use GitHub for now. We can access that later on. Okay, cool. Now let me create all my folders again, just like we did before. So I'm going to create kind of a new folder, and again, new folders for CSS. I'm going to do the same thing like we did last time, just to give you one more chance to take a look at it as if you haven't seen it before. And I'm going to go fast without telling you really too much detail about what I'm doing. I'm going to go a little faster than I normally do, just so we can get this off the road, right? And of course, I'm going to do the same thing that I normally would do. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do, but that's okay because I can kind of drag and drop that in there, and then rename this thing to what I want, which is lib, and that's cool. So I've got my structure in here, and I'm going to go a new folder, and it's going to be audio, and new folder. I'm also going to have images and new folder fonts. So all I've done here, guys, for the guys who just walked in again, I'm just creating a new project. We're going to create a Create Jas boilerplate project for COMP2068 that we're going to reuse over and over again. Okay, as opposed to us doing this stuff that I'm doing again and again. Okay. Okay, cool. So I've done that. Now I'm going to add in my index.html. And by the way, if you're late and you just want to watch instead of following along, you could always fork me on GitHub after this thing is all done, right? As opposed to doing it yourself. So here's my index.html, and inside my index.html, I'm going to change this to lang, just like we did before, right? Here's my language, and it's English, and of course, I'm going to in my head, I'm going to put a couple meta tags, just like we normally do with character sets. And oops, if I can actually type properly. And of course, my meta tag for my name is equal to viewport, and my content being width, device width in a scale of 1. Okay, and with all that mumbling done, I'm going to go into the title and say it's COMP2068 Create Jas, and then Boilerplate. Boilerplate. That's what. So Create Jas Boilerplate. That's what we're doing here. Here I put in my CSS, and again, this is all going to be wiped out as you'll see. Here's my CSS section, and that's my CSS section. And down the bottom of my body, I'm going to of course have my JavaScript section, just like we normally do. And you guys have seen this a number of times already, so it should be like really easy for you to detect, to see this thing over and over here. Not here, sorry. I'll be okay. Inside my body tag, I'll call it init for now. Okay, so we've got all that basic stuff in there. I need to create a CSS file. It's a style sheet, and we're going to call it game.css. I'll close that off for now. And we also need in our scripts, we need a, this is where it gets funky. I'm going to add in a Typescript file, and it's going to be called game.ts, which is going to convert my stuff to TypeScript. There it is. And I've got the break, right? This is my split. My split screen is because of my version of TypeScript and everything else. And by the way, I'm using TypeScript version 1.3, right? There's a reason for what I'm telling you this. There is version 1.4 out, okay? But I'll tell you right now, 1.4 and 1.3 are a little bit different. And Visual Studio 2013 with update 4 uses TypeScript 1.3. You can download 1.4, but we're not going to do that for this class because there are some other issues related to this. Okay, so that's one. Now I'm going to link my CSS to my page, and I'm also going to link my game to my page. There it is. I've kind of done all the basic steps. Now for Create Jas, as we knew before, I need to have a canvas element. So here's my canvas element. Canvas, where the game will happen, right? And inside there, I need a canvas element. So I need a canvas element, and inside my canvas element, and a couple of attributes for my canvas element. Okay, I know I need to add an ID. And I'm going to call it for now canvas. You can rename this later on. Okay, that's the first thing. I also need to have a couple of properties. And if you notice my shorthand here, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to say my width is equal to, again, 640, and my height is equal to 480. You can change this to whatever you like. I'm going to go to the end and press tab, and it creates my element. This is my element, how it should be. So I've got my empty canvas element where everything's going to happen. This is where my stuff is going to happen. Okay, cool. I've done that. Now I've got to add in my funky libraries. All right, this is good. And I know that to get my libraries, I need to go to the Create Jas website. And of course, I want to get, if I go to Create Jas, there are a number of different libraries to get for them. I need to get Create Jas, my Easel.js, my Tween.js, my Sound.js, and my Preload.js. I need to get all these 4 libraries in order for me to use my stuff. I probably won't use Tween.js too much in our examples, but doesn't mean that you couldn't. So if you're comfortable tweening with Flash, then Tween.js is for you. But I probably won't do it just from a complexity perspective. It becomes a little bit complex if you don't know about tweening and Flash. It's a very similar thing. All right, Sound.js and Preload.js, these other 3, though, I'm definitely going to use lots of. So I might as well download them. And I've downloaded the zips. If you just click on Download Zip here over and over again, you can do that. You can also use the CDN, right, which is the Content Delivery Network, which is hosted live. That's great if you've got a live site and if your site is in production. That's the way I probably would go. But for us, because we want to to develop our games, we're going to kind of download the local file, the local zip file. So do this, download these 4 zip files here. And when you do that, you'll have some, I've got them in my downloads. The first one is Easel.js. So if I go scroll down to where I have my Easel.js downloaded, so I'm going to search for it, and it should be called something like Easel.js master. There it is. It has this folder here in the directory structure, right? Easel.js master. Okay, cool. So I've got my Easel.js master, and I need to look in the lib folder for my libraries. So here I click in here, and there's a bunch of little libraries in here. Well, this is what I need to start off, right? So I'm going to intercut now. I don't need this anymore. I've downloaded all my libraries, and I'm going to drag and drop from Easel.js. There's the minified file into my libraries directory, my lib directory. So I'm just going to drag and drop here into Visual Studio. And I'm going to do the same things for the other ones. So I'm going to go into, so that's easel.js. I'm going to go into sound.js. Here's my sound.js in my lib, and drag and drop my sound.min.js file in my lib folder. And I'm going to do the same thing for preload. Here's my preloader, and I'm going to go down and drag and drop that in here as well. And I'm also going to do the same thing for my tween.js library, which I probably won't use very much. So here's my tween.js, and in my library, and I want to go here and drag and drop. Cool, cool, right? I'm ready to go. So I've got my libraries. Now I've got to link them to my file. I can't run my libraries without linking it to my index.html file. So I'm going to give me some space here, and I'm going to drag each one of these in order. All right, in order. They have to be dragged in the right order for me to do this. So easel.js goes first. Then I'm going to do tween.js, and then it's going to be sound.js, and then at the bottom after that, I'm going to include my preloader. So of course my preloader can load assets, so that's why I need to have my sound and my easel.js loaded first. Okay, so this is the order that it has to be, approximately it should be in. Okay, and it's important because all this has to come before my game.js because I want to have access to all these libraries here for my game. One really important file that we want to include in our project, if I right click and if I go add, it has something called, in Visual Studio 2013, there's something called an IntelliSense file, a reference.js file we want to include in our files. We're going to add that in there, so reference.js. It kind of hangs out at the script level, but it actually links all these things together, creates reference paths for all these things. It's important for us to do this so that way we don't have any issues. Okay, I'm going to save everything now. Go back. So here's our libraries. Now this is all fine and good, and in JavaScript we'd be good to go, right? But we ain't using JavaScript. We use in TypeScript. And when we use TypeScript, we need to have type definition libraries for each of these things. So that way the TypeScript can give us the proper code hinting for each of our libraries. So remember, we can't run TypeScript without type definition files, right? And in order for us to do that, there's a couple ways we can do it. We can go online to Definitely Typed, which I showed you guys before. But let me show it to you again. There's a website. It's actually a Git repository called Definitely Typed. And you can manually drag and drop. Was that?
You already got that.
Oh no, but you could definitely go in here and find your libraries. I want to show it to you one more time. And let's say, for example, you want to find your libraries for easel.js. You just scroll down, and then you go to the easel.js library here. If you notice, and if you see it, it says 11 days ago they made a change. Guys, here's the rub. If I download this type definition library for easel.js right now, it's gonna cake. Ain't gonna work. Why? It's expecting us to use TypeScript level 1.4. That includes joins and some weird other things that TypeScript 1.3 doesn't do. It's great functionality for TypeScript, but our version of Visual Studio 2013 will not support it. Right? So how do I get these type definition libraries? Well, luckily I have older versions of them that we can use. So this is what I'm going to do. I've already created this funky library here, and this is why I said it's probably best for you to follow along instead of create it yourself. But what you could do is, if you go up to my website, my GitHub site, I have another boilerplate that I did earlier this week for the other course. In this particular case, for 397, I created this boilerplate which in my scripts file, in my libs folder, I have all of these files here that I already have created. My TypeScript files are the correct ones to use, and this is the ones that I'm going to grab and put in. I'm sorry this is a bit of a runaround, but until we update our version to 1.4 for TypeScript, Visual Studio 2013, the other ones that are the current ones that you can download through NuGet Package Manager will not work. You'll get an error. Okay, there's no other way around it. So, so in order for us to do this, we're just going to steal these ones. Now, I've already done that, of course, because I have my local library here of my files, and I'm just going to put them up. So this is where I would ask you to fork me on GitHub for your boilerplate when I'm ready to go, when we're finished this thing off. Okay, so I'm going to go into COMP2068, this boilerplate from another course that I'm doing, and I'm going to go into my scripts, and I'm going to go into library, and I'm going to drag and drop this stuff into my library right now. And I'm sorry about this. Normally I'd like to create it all with you, but it's just not practical for now. And that's why. Because otherwise we're going to waste a lot of time going through this thing, and you're going to say, Tom, it's not working, I'm getting all these errors. And you know what? I'll get the errors too. There's nothing I can do to avoid the errors. There's nothing, no change that I can make to really go around it. My version of TypeScript is different, and that's why I'm going to get these errors, and we don't want that. Okay, good. So I've got all the libraries now. Create Jas lib.d.ts, easel.js d.ts. The D part is the type definition, right? Preload d.ts, sound d.ts, and tweet.js d.ts. And those are all the files we need. Okay, good. We're all good to go. And I'm going to save everything now. And if you want to fork me at this point, it's a little premature, but you could. All you have to do is update yourself later on. So I'm going to make sure that I have nothing excluded or untracked. And I'm going to say created basic site structure for Create Jas projects. Okay, and then click commit. Cool, cool. And I'm going to go to home and go to unsync commits and sync. And when I do such a thing, now you will have everything inside your little folder called COMP2068-Create Jas Boilerplate. Okay, cool. We still haven't really done a lot. If you notice, these are the only libraries that are in here because reference.js realizes that the d.ts is not a JavaScript library. Okay, cool. Cool, cool, cool. Let's go back. So I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer. And I want to actually do some stuff to prove to you that the canvas now works, right? How do we do such a thing? I'm going to go into game.ts. I'm going to double click on that. And of course, we need a couple of global variables that I said, like we said last time. So my first variable is going to be called canvas, which is where we're going to hold our canvas, a reference to our canvas element in the index.html file. Okay, cool. And the next one we need to create is stage. Well, this is where we can check to see if our Create Jas libraries are connected. I'm going to use the TypeScript : to indicate that I'm referencing this as a data type, and I'm going to say Create Jas. Oh, there it is, right? Create Jas dot stage, capital S. Right? I need to do that. And once I've done stage, now my stage variable can get all the code hinting that it needs. Right? I can use dot notation with my stage variable, so I can play with it a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to kind of scroll down here, and now I'm going to create my new function. Here's my function called init, right? And this is my first function. And inside my init function, I'm going to call my canvas element. My canvas is equal to, of course, here's my regular JavaScript, and you can do this with jQuery if you added the jQuery library. I would say document.getElementById. And I'm targeting the canvas element that I've created here in my index.html with a canvas ID. That's what I'm doing here. And then in here, I'm also going to create our new stage. Stage is equal to new createjas.stage, right? That's what it is right here. And of course, I'm going to pass in there the canvas element. Okay, everything's good. We're all good to go now. Okay, cool. So the stage is there. I've got my canvas in there. And now I'm going to create my ticker, which I need to do because my ticker is the thing that keeps track of my frame rate. So createjas.ticker.setFPS, and we're going to make that a 60, right? So that's 60 frames per second, right? That's what that is. And we're going to create an event listener for the ticker class, createjas.ticker.add event listener, and we're listening for a tick. And we're going to create our new game loop function, or callback function, if you will, that's going to run everything. Okay? And then we're going to go to this other function called main. Main is where we're going to have our main game run. We haven't created that either. So there's a couple functions we have to create still. Let's do the game loop function. So here's our function game loop. And in our function game loop, of course, all we need to do for now is do a stage.update. Stage.update. Which basically refreshes the stage. That's all it does, right? So I'll put that in there. Refreshes our stage, right? That's all it does. Okay, and then in our other function here, here's our function main. This is where all the our main game starts off. So our main our game kicks off in here. Okay, that's what it does. So here's our function and our main function. Now if you notice there's no more errors. And now let's do a couple things. Let's do that hello world thing again like we did last time, but I'll do it again. Now remember, I'm going to probably do something with my two variables for my two labels. One of them is going to be called a hello text label, and the other one, I'm going to make a bitmap today to make Rob happy, right? So I'm going to do, one of them is going to be called var hello text. That's when I do that, and I'm going to make it of type createjas.text, right? And text is part of the EaselJS CreateJS framework. It creates a text or type that we can use anywhere on our page, okay? And you know what? I'm going to create a button. I'm going to make a button, and it's going to be of type createjas.bitmap, a bitmap button, right? So for now, it's going to contain a bitmap. So I know that it's going to be global because I'm going to do something with it in game loop. So to preempt that, I'm going to kind of put it up here, okay? And I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to say these are my objects, right? So game objects, right? That's what these things are, right? And inside my main, right, I'm going to start creating the game objects or instantiating the game objects. So I know I've created one. So I have hello text, and if you notice, IntelliSense tells me I can see your variable, right? IntelliSense, you created it already, and it even tells me what it is. It's of type createjas.text. That's the data type from my hello text. Here it is. And I know that I can say hello text is equal to createjas.text, or new, sorry, a new createjas.text. That's what I want to put in there. Can't forget the new. And it's listing for a string, so where I want to put a string value in there, so we'll just say hello world, which we did last time, and a font, and again I'm going to make it 40 pixels consoleless. We kind of mentioned the size and the font type, and then of course the color, which we're going to make black for now. So 00, 00, 00, 00. And we're going to close this one off. So this right now, this line here defines our object called hello text. It's just a text object, but it's not doing anything yet. We haven't added it to the stage. In order for us to do that, just a reminder, we have to go stage.addChild and then hello text. Very similar, very Flash-like. Okay, so that's our hello text. And to test that out, we're going to run this thing and see how it works. Boom, right? And if everything goes well, we're going to have our hello world. Now we don't have a ring around or some kind of way of knowing where our canvas starts and finishes. So this is a good place to go into my Solution Explorer. I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go into my Solution Explorer, and inside my game.css, I'm going to replace this with a canvas, a reference to my canvas tag, right? And of course, inside my canvas tag, I want to add a border, like we did last time, which is a dash border, which is 1 pixel approximately, and black. We can make this whatever color we'd like. For now, this is good enough, and this will give us at least a border around our game, so we know where our game is sitting. Right? Now, if you notice it didn't show up, hey, how come it didn't show up? Why? We got to refresh. And when we refresh, boom, our border comes up. And sometimes you'll have to refresh your screen a little bit because what's happening is your CSS has to take effect, and it has to, because we're caching, we have a cache going on. And if you don't do that, you might waste lots of time going, why isn't this working? I want to kill the gods of like HTML. And the reason for that is you need to refresh. Refresh often, folks, because this way will save you a lot of headache and pain, and you won't feel like you're the devil. Okay, so hello world. We got my hello world, and it's going on the top left corner of the screen. Why? Because if you remember what we talked about last time when we did this, the way our x and y coordinates work is the top left corner of our screen is where our x and y is equal to 0. And then this over here, the top right corner of the screen, is where my x value is equal to the width of my canvas. And where my, down here in the bottom left corner of the screen, is where my x value is equal to 0, because it hasn't moved, right? It's the same corner, right? But my y value is the height of my screen, okay? And of course, in this corner, it'd be my height is equal to, or my width would be the width of my canvas, and the height would be my height of my canvas, x and y being those two values. Okay, so that's how we have our coordinate system set up. So if we know that, if I want to move my hello text to the middle of my screen, how do I do such a thing? Well, I know that I have access to the size of my canvas here in JavaScript, and later on what we'll be doing is we'll be creating a constant that does that for us. But for now, let's just do it on our own. So we're going to say, well, I want to say my hello text dot x coordinate is equal to stage dot canvas, right, dot width. Now, width didn't come up as IntelliSense, but it is actually there. It is actually a property. If I say the width, though, it's going to be right over to the other side. So we need to multiply, sort of divide this by 2. But division is always a bad idea when it comes to computers, because what happens is division takes a little bit more cycles than multiplication does. So what's the equivalent in multiplication? Yes, times 0.5 is what we're going to use. And whenever you are tempted to divide, I would recommend you multiply to give us the same value. Yes? Correct. Correct. Well, we're not going to do that right now, but you're right. That is correct. Absolutely correct. And we're not going to be really centered because we don't know the size of our text right now, right? So it's actually not going to be truly in the center. Let's just do this. And hello text.y will be the same thing, stage.canvas.height now, our height value, and it's times 0.5, right? So that we've got our height and width. If I refresh our screen, now it's going to be slightly in the middle. But hey, wait a minute, like Rob said, we are in the middle, but where does my text start from? It starts from the corner up here, right? And this, so it's saying that this is the center, but this is the center of my screen. But my text isn't centered, it starts at the center. So in order for me to start my center in the middle, I can use another property from my object called regX and regY, which is equivalent to our, we set the focus, the registration point in the middle. And there's another command for that in ActionScript that's different. But at the end of the day, it means the same thing. So if I say my hello text, all right, dot regX, the registration point for the x value, right? I can set that equal to, well, I need to get the width of my of hello world. But we don't know the width of hello world because hello world it's pixels, right? It's pixels, and I can't just go hello world dot length, right? That won't do it, or dot width. Kind of doesn't work. But there is another property we can use. We can say hello text dot get bounds, right? Dot width. And what this does is it measures the width of our of the hello world text right now. But we can't use that either because that's the whole width. We don't want that for registration value. We want to multiply that by 0.5, right? So that's the first thing we do. And then we do the same thing for our height, just to make it exactly the same. Dot regX, regY this time, is equal to hello text dot get bounds, right? Dot height. And then we multiply that by 0.5. Now when we do that, that should fix our problems if we haven't done anything incorrectly. And I refresh, I should get my hello world text plop in the middle of my screen now, much better than before. Okay. Make sense? So I need to set the registration point. The registration point is the middle value, the rotation point, if you will, the focus. What's it called in ActionScript? There's actually a word for it. There's an actual function for it in ActionScript as well, where you can set the registration point of value. But it's not regX, it's something else. Okay. Anyways, but the regX and regY is the registration point, the place where, when I draw my image or object, the middle point of that object. And by default, the middle point of that object is 0, 0 of that object, which is the top left corner of that object. In the hello text, it would be up here somewhere, right? And now I've set it in here. That's my middle of my object, right? So my registration point is where my object can rotate to, right? So if I set the registration point in the middle, now if I rotate my object, it'll rotate from the middle, not from the side, okay? Think of it that way, almost like the center point of the object. Okay, so cool, my registration point's there. And now I want to make my registration point, I want to rotate my object every frame, right? So here's my hello text, and I want to rotate it every frame in the middle of our stage. How do I do that? Well, I do that in this game loop. This is one way to do it. I go into here and I say hello text, because I have access to it, dot rotation, right, plus equals, right, to 5. That's pretty fast rotation, because it's 5 degrees every frame, right? That's pretty fast. And I'm doing 60 frames a second here, so it's insane, right? But let's try this out anyway and see what happens. Bam, right? There we go, there's our rotation. And it's roughly in the middle, if you notice, okay? It's not quite where I wanted it. If you notice, the center point seems to be about right here, right? But it's still working. Now it's a little funky. There's a reason why there's a little bit of bounce here. Why? I'm running it in a virtual machine, right? So if I ran this thing and I ran it, instead of a virtual machine, I ran it with MAMP or Wamp or some kind of local server node, right? It would run way faster than this. It would run like 60 frames per second. Okay, cool. So I've got that going on. I like that. But what about if I want to not only do that, because I can totally rotate that thing around, hello world, but I want to set up a button. Okay, so this is my label. Here is my label. And I want to set up a button now. And I want to set up a bitmap button, right? And in my bitmap button, I need to define it. Well, I've already have the button itself. I called it button, right? I could have called it my button or whatever. What the hell? I need a new Create Jas bitmap, right? It's pretty simple. However, I don't have a bitmap right now, so let's get one. I want to go online, and I'm going to go to Google, and let's just put in, I'll call it button, right? So I'm going to call it button. I'm going to go to images for the button, and let's see if there's an image that I can steal from Google. Now I did a green button for my other class, so for you guys I'll make it a blue button, just because, to make it a little different, right? So here I am, I'm taking this blue button, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to save image as, right? And now it's going to go to my downloads folder, and I'm going to call this blue button, right? .jpg. Okay, cool. I got my blue button. I've got issues, and you'll see what the issue is in a second, right? I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm going to find my blue button wherever it is. Here it is. Here's my blue button, and I'm going to go back to here. Remember how we added in? We have to drag and drop this thing. There's a little bit of an error here because we haven't finished the statement. Don't worry about it for now. But I have to drag and drop this thing inside my images assets, right? So here I am. Take my blue button and drag and drop it inside my images. Here it is. Now I have access to it, my blue button. All right, let's add this in. So now I need to go in here and then define a path for my blue button. So I'm going to say assets / images / blue button .jpg, right? And that's my bitmap. And that's how simple it is. I've accessed my bitmap. It's done, right? Okay, cool. I got my button. Now I've got to stage.addChild my button, right? Cool. Okay, there's my button. I haven't done anything with it. Let's try it out. Let us run this example. What's the problem here? It's massive. That's what the problem is. It's really big. And if you notice something else, look at my hello world goes underneath it. How come? I don't have a transparent background, so I need to. This is a JPEG image, it's not a PNG image. That's number one. Okay. 2. Why is my hello world image going behind my button? Yes, Rob. Huh? It is, from a display object perspective, the display objects get added to the array, the display array, at the end every single time. So this is the layering of the display objects. My stage is first, then my hello world, then this button, right? So my hello world seems to appear behind the button because it was added first. If I wanted hello world to be displayed before the button or on top of the button, it would have to be added after. Okay, that's how it would have to be. You can also switch it around. Okay, so let's just try this out. So let's do that. Let's put this button, let's move the position of the button from here, right, for now. And now I'm creating it and also adding it. You can add it, create it first and then add it, right? Which is also another way to do it. But to keep it simple for us, let's just move it over here, right? Okay, so there's our button now, and now we'll just refresh the page, right? I'm just going to refresh this instead of making it again. Okay, now it's on top, and you can't see that the button is there, right? But another problem is the button is very big. It's big. I want to make this button smaller because the button is way too big for I don't want to make it that big, right? How do I do that? Well, there's a couple ways you can do that, and I want you to tell me what you think is the best way to do it. I could say this. First of all, I could say my button, I want to set my X and Y values to the same thing as our stage. I'm just going to copy this stuff because I want it in the middle of our stage 2, right? So I'm just going to copy all this stuff, and instead of hello text, I want to replace my hello text with button. So I'm going to go change some of these values, right? So that my hello text is now my button, and now I want to refresh just that alone, to see what it looks like, right? So I'm going to go back here and refresh, and now it doesn't come up. Why? Because I probably made a mistake. Let me see, go back. And, oh yes. Oh yes. So now I have a problem. My button isn't coming up. What do I do to figure out what the hell is going on, right? Well, there's a couple of things that I know that there's a problem. But I tried to copy this because I tried to be smart and to save time, right? But somehow this was working, but when I copied the same code from my button class, it's not working. How come? Well, let's see what error we got. So we're going to go here to the hamburger, we're going to go down to more tools, we're going to go across to developer tools or JavaScript Console, and in here we'll get an error if possible, and it says, I got 1,410 console messages that tell me there's an uncaught type error, cannot read property rotation of undefined. I didn't tell anything to stop, I didn't define a rotation that's undefined, and it gives me some links to my Typescript file in lines 17 and 18. This is incorrect. Right? We know that it was working before, but when I put in my button up here and I added all this text in here, this is the last thing I did, right? It killed the operation of my hello text. All right, just to prove that, I'm going to put all this text into stasis. That's what I like to call it. Let's put this text into stasis. I'm going to create a label, right, or a comment. I'm going to take all this stuff here and put it in between these 2 points, because making comments in JavaScript is just like how we do it in C# and Java and other places. All right, so I'm going to do that and then run it. And let's see if that is the issue. Because I can isolate my code. Oh yeah, there's my button, all right. So that's definitely a problem. Okay, something I did, this code is breaking my program, right? Okay, how do I do that? Well, let's take a couple things out at a time. Let's do these two. I want to keep these two, this piece of code, but not these two pieces of code. Let's try that. So I'm going to go get this over here and then put my comment starting here. My block comments, I want them to start over here. Okay, so my block comments are from here to here. These are the things that are commented out. These things are now back in, so they're back into the running, right? I'm going to put this a little closer to my button. And now let's update it and see if I have the same problem. Is this the issue? Let's pull this down so you can see the thing a little bit better. I'll refresh. Whoa, no, that's not the issue. It worked, actually. I don't have the middle of my button, but it tried to center it. So something to do with my getBounds control here, this button.getBounds is not working. Why? Because getBounds is good for certain things, but not for all things. And I'm assuming that getBounds works with my button class. But in fact, all I need to do for my button class, I'm just curious to think if we know what our width is, right, and width doesn't work, right? So that's not working for us. Let's say, well, button.regex is equal to button dot, and then there's also something else. There's getBounds, there's getTransformBounds, right? That's another thing. If you notice, here's my list of things that I can do within my class, right? And if I can also try and say getTransformBounds, or if I say measure, I can't do measured width. I can't do width because width doesn't work, right? Let's try. So how can I do that? How can I measure the width of my button? Well, I can put a hard and fast value for it. And by the way, when I do this, getBounds width and getBounds height, I'm actually calculating the height and the width, which actually is a calculation for my CPU. And I want to reduce calculations, so I should know better. It's better to know a hard and fast value for my objects in the future as we go forward, as opposed to trying and calculate it here on the fly, right? I don't know my value for my button, and my button has to be fixed anyway, so I might as well just do it. So I'm going to right-click here. Actually, I'm going to go on the Mac side for a second to get all my tools here. I'm going to go to my downloads, and in here I've got my blue button. I'm going to right-click and open it with my funny program Fireworks, right? This favorite program of mine. And Fireworks, hopefully if it'll run, I want it to open up my button. Well, here it is. So my button has this white border. I want to get rid of that. And I can do that by, of course, using my a couple tools to get rid of my background. Right? So that's the first thing I want to do, right, for my button. The second thing is I need to know how big this button is. And right now I know my button is 221 by 221, right? So that means if I want to center my button in the screen, and if I really want to be accurate, and I know how big my button is, I could say something like, my button is 110, right? I could do that. If I measure it, it's going to calculate the 110. And I don't want that, because any calculations on a web server is going to slow down my frame rate, right? Anything I do. So I want to try and reduce calculations as much as possible. So that's one thing I could do. Okay, so first of all, let's save this as a ping image. File, save as, because a ping image has this transparent background stuff that I can use. I'm going to put that in the same place in downloads for now. I'm going to call this, instead of JPEG, I'm going to save it as a ping, and you can have other programs that'll do the same thing for you. I'm just using Fireworks. Okay, it's done. Saved as a ping, and I know it's 221, which is roughly 110. And here's my ping image, and I need to attach this to my project. Right, so here's my project, and I go in here, and here's my ping, and I'm just going to drag and drop it into my images. So now I've got two. I've got a JPEG image, and I got a ping image. I want to remove my JPEG now, because I don't need both of them to attach to my project. And you know what? When I call up my button, I want it to be a ping. So there it is. Okay, that's cool. And I know that my regex is roughly 110. This is hard-coded because I know my button is roughly 110. And I can do that. 110 by 110, I can set my registration value to my button. And now when I go back in here and I refresh, I shouldn't get an error. I should try and run this first. How about that? I shouldn't get an error after I run it. And my button is perfectly centered. Right? Well, not centered with the text, but certainly text centered. Okay, cool. I've got my button. It's in the middle of my screen. I want to be able to press my button to do something, right? Well, using the previous examples that we've seen already, right? Here's my button, and here's my label. Well, you know what? I know my button and my label. I can do things with them because they're objects. And you know, I did do this add event listener for my ticker, so I should be able to do this add event listener for my button. Let's do that. So I'm going to set up button.add event listener, and I'm listening for a click event, and my click event is going to be called button clicked, right? I haven't set up a button clicked event yet, a listener, but let's do it up here before my main. So here's I'm going to set up my new event listeners, okay, or event handlers actually is what they are. And in here I'm going to say function button clicked, right? Here's my button click to make sure it's the right name. It is. And inside my button clicked event, well, whenever my button clicks, I want to change the text that's inside my hello world. I want to change it to, you know, something else, like goodbye. Right? So, but not every time, just the one time. Right? So I say this hello text, right? Dot text, because this is a text value for the text object. Hello text dot text is equal to, and I give it a new value. Goodbye. Now there's an issue here. I measured my hello text to be a certain thing, and it's centered according to how big it was. Now my goodbye is going to be a different size, right? That's okay. So I've done that. I've set up my hello text.text. I've changed it to goodbye on button click. Okay, let's try that out for the first time and see if it does anything. All right, so refresh, and when I click on my button, it changes to goodbye, right? And if you notice now, it's spinning around the other side. Okay? Because now my centering is the same as it was before, right? And I didn't recenter it. Now, in order for me to do that, what to do? This is where I would like to do it. I need to do something like this. I need to do this funky recentering stuff, find the center stuff again. This hello text regex and reg y. I need to do this again, which calls me to say, if I do it again and again, hey, this could be some kind of function, right, that I call, right? Because I want to do it again and again, right? But for now, just to keep it simple, we're not going to make it a function. We're just going to just copy the lines of code, because I don't want to kill your heads here with all the stuff I'm doing, and put it over here like this. So I'm just going to reset up the boundaries for my hellos, for my text, because my text has changed to hello to goodbye. Make sense? Okay, let's go back. And now that I've done that, I'm going to refresh. I've got my hello world. I click onto it, and it's goodbye now. And now it's roughly centered again. Okay, it's within the button. Okay, this is cool, but my button doesn't look like a button. It just looks like a blue circle with some funky stuff. In order for me to make it look like a button, I need to do some kind of effects when I hover in and out of it. Okay, cool. Let's write that and make sure it works. So I need to add a couple more event listeners. One of them is button.addEventListener mouse over, right? And we can have a callback called, button over, and button.addEventListener mouse out, right? And we can have a button out event that I haven't written yet. I haven't written those two things, but we can simply write them up here. So let's just do that. So we'll go function button out, right? And then there's another function called button over. Okay, so a couple things now, my error should go away. Yes, it does. My errors go away. And then if you notice my on button out, right? So actually, let's do on button over. On button over, I want the alpha transparency of my bitmap to drop to 0.5. So I'm going to say button.alpha is equal to 0.5. And on button out, I want to change my button.alpha to equals to 1. So in other words, it's going to be back to 100%. Okay? So my transparency will go back. It'll fade to 50%, then it'll go back to 100%. Almost like a hover effect, right? That's all I'm doing here. Okay, cool. Now there's a problem. This won't work. It looks like it should work, right? And if I refresh my screen, everything looks kind of similar. But however, if I hover in and out, it's not working. How come? Well, there's another thing we got to enact. Hovering over a button events in Create Jas, they take a lot of cycles again, right? So by default, the whole hover button mouse over thing is disabled. You have to enable it, right, on the stage, right, or the container that you're looking at. So in this particular case, I'm going to stop debugging. I'm going to go to my stage where my stage is declared up here in my init, and go stage dot, and if I start typing mouse, if I notice there's enable mouse over, that's the one I want. And I also have to declare how many times I want to check per second. I think 20 times per second might be enough. The higher the value, the more lag you'll have, because it'll keep going back to this event to check if the mouse is working. Okay, so I have to enable mouse over. So enable mouse events, right? Like hover events, other mouse events is what I mean, right? And if I refresh, if I start off with my program again, and I refresh the stage to make sure that my code is refreshed, because I don't want to break my head, because I say it's not working, what's not working? I got to refresh, right? If I hover over it now, I get that funky 50% transparency as I hover, while it's still rotating. And if I click, it changes to goodbye.
It's still highlight. I think.
Yeah?
There's like a tiny bit of lag.
It's lag because of my Visual Studio virtualization. If I was to put this in a different server, and I'll prove it to you, right? So this is in here, right? In my Visual Studio. Oh, by the way, before we do any of that, let us do a little bit of things so you guys can fork me to be on the same page as I am, okay? So I'm going to do it, go to Home on my stop debugging here. I'm going to go to Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Changes. I'm going to say created first draft of Create Jas boilerplate. Okay, and commit. There's my commit, right? And there's a couple of untracked files. I want to add all those files in there as well, right? And of course, because I did that, I have to commit again. So added untracked files. Otherwise, yours won't work. And then I go back into my home, and I go to back down sync commits, and I sync. I got a couple commits that I'm syncing now. Good, good, good. Now it's all synced. You should have everything that I have. You should be up to date with me if you fork me on GitHub. Okay, cool. I've got that now, and this is all funky, but I want to prove to you that if I run a local server that it's faster, right? So let's do a couple things. Let's kill this, right? And I'm going to run something called Wamp Server. And again, there's different ones, Wamp, MAMP, LAMP, ZAMP, right, for different systems. I'm serious. Wamp stands for Windows AMP stack, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, right? And that's what I'm running. You can download Wamp from the web. It's a free download. Okay, I'm running it, and if you notice on the top right, bottom right corner of my screen here, it's green, which means that this little inside my sidebar means that my port 80 is okay. It's good to go, right? So now, instead of going the way I did before, I know that I want to look at localhost, and I've done some pre-work, so I can put in localhost, and it's going to pull up, if I do things correctly, my GitHub folder. Here's my GitHub folder, right? All my GitHub, right, with localhost, and I know that my COMP2068 Create Jas boilerplate is what I want to look at. I know it's probably this file right here that I'm looking at right here, and that's not it. No, not that one either. Well, that's probably the bottom one. I can't see because I can't extend it. And it's this one. There it is. Is there lag?
Can you power over it? That's okay.
And that's just me with my server. If I can set it up.
I meant to say that I was checking 29 seconds because it's 20. So when you move the mouse over, it's taking just like a small millisecond before it highlights.
Yeah.
So
And if you notice, look at this. See my mouse? Is it over? Is it over? Is it over? Look at me now. Oh, no. That's how accurate it is. It's per pixel. And that's why it takes so much energy, because it's pixel for pixel by pixel calculation. So I'm actually doing a pixel collision with my mouse. That's bad, right? Because I'm doing my pixel, if I hover over with my mouse, I know there's a collision. The easier, cheaper way to do it is actually to do a collision. To say, I can draw a little point on the end of my mouse that you can't see, like a single pixel, as an example, and then say, am I touching? Am I touching? That's easier. Or is the distance between the middle of my my object and my click itself is what it is. So that's really it in a nutshell. I've kind of put together a really simple demo for Hello World, but every time we kick off our Create Jas boilerplate, I want to start from here. I don't want to do all that work again. That just took too long. It took me over an hour for me to do that. So imagine if we did an hour of class, and 1 out of 3 hours we did that over and over again. That's a pain in the ass, right? So we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to have our boilerplate to work from now on. And you have it with me because if you refresh here on GitHub, if I'm going to go back up to my new repository that I created for you, yours is COMP2068 Create Jas boilerplate. That's the one, and it's been added like 3 minutes ago. So if you fork me on GitHub here, and some of you already have, then you'll have everything that I have. So you don't have to go through that mess. Okay, that's cool. But now I need to use my boilerplate. I want to create my new projects from this boilerplate every single time. How do I do it? Well, I need to do something in Visual Studio now. I don't need this anymore. I can download this. You would download this into your file. So you're going to click Download Zip into your files, right? That's one way of doing it. And here I'm going to close down my solution. This is enough for me to start with, because I'm going to replace all that stuff anyway when I do my game, okay? All this stuff I just did, I don't need that. I'm going to kill it all, right? Makes sense. Okay, so here's in my Solution Explorer, everything's done. I've closed down my solution. And now what I want to do is I want to get that solution back, right? So if I go to Recent Projects and Solutions, here's my Create Jas boilerplate, right? Here it is. Well, it opens in the exact same spot. What I wanted to do actually is go File, Export Template. This is how you create your own versions. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're making your own game, and you're at a good stopping point, and you want to use this piece of game because you've done a bunch of stuff. You added some classes for a player, other things you want to do, but you want to save this as a template so you can hold up all your classes and your structure, and then you can start a new game with a lot of the structure you have from the old game. Well, you do it like this: Export Template. And in here, you have a project template. You go, and it's based off this COMP2068 Create Jas boilerplate project. And by the way, you can have more than one project within your solutions, right? But all we need is this one. We're targeting this one. I'm going to click Next. And then it says, hey, here's what it's going to be called: COMP2068 Create Jas boilerplate, right? And in here, I can give a little suggestion, a little description of what it is. So Create Jas boilerplate. You should be doing this with me now. If you download boilerplate. For COMP2068, you can call it whatever you like, right? And I'll say first draft, right? Because we're going to do more. Okay, cool. I'm going to press. You can actually add a little icon image for it if you want to, and there's rules around that. If you go to MSDN You can find out what the size of the image are and the preview image of what it would look like and so on. But I'm going to leave it the way it is, the defaults, and press finish. When I do that, it's going to create a little funky zip file, which is cool. And now I'm going to close off this solution. Okay, I'm going to close my solution. So I'm done. Okay, I've got my boilerplate. It's saved in memory. It's saved on the hard drive. I'm going to go File. Here's where it really, all our work pays off, guys, right here. File, New, Project. And when I go to New Project, I'm going to go, instead of Web, because it's not going to show up here, I'm going to go to C#, and I'm going to skip all the way down to the bottom where I have this COMP2068. I got to look for it, right? Oh, wait, COMP2068 boilerplate. I can choose that as a project type, right? Click onto it, and that gives me a default name, COMP2068 boilerplate 1. And I'm going to choose something else, like for example, my first game, right? And once I do that, I'm not going to save this as a Git repository. I'm just showing you how to do it. I'll press OK. And then it takes all my files from my Create Jas boilerplate, and now I can access them as normal. And if you notice, my scripts are there, my library is there, my references, all this stuff, all this work that I did is there. I don't have to do all that stuff again. All that work that I did is saved. And if I go to my game.ts file, all this extra stuff is here with my, but one thing it's not here yet is, because I haven't compiled it to disk yet, is my TypeScript isn't here. If I save, right, or if I save all, now this is my TypeScript side. It looks identical right now pretty much to my, so my JavaScript and my TypeScript like identical. I mean, there's no difference right now because I haven't done anything new with TypeScript, right? The only thing that it gave me was a little bit of code hinting here on this side when I created my types. And if you notice, the only line that's a little different is if I scroll up here, is this stage. I typed it as a stage, as a Create Jas stage. Here I didn't do it because JavaScript doesn't have that, right? But this gave me a little bit more code hinting that I didn't have over here. That's the only difference right now. So really, it's identical to the JavaScript we were just doing the whole time. This is all JavaScript. Okay, and we're using our canvas to display everything. Okay, cool. So this is my new game that I want to make, right? Well, not only does it do that, but if I go to my index.html, inside of my title, it says COMP2068 boilerplate. That's cool. And I can change that to whatever I want to make. So I just wanted to show you this so you know that everything is identical. There's nothing that I have to do from now on. And this is our starting point. So next week when we get together, we're not going to do all that work because it's too much work, man, right? I don't want to do all that stuff again. I know it's tried and true. I know I can make a button. Now I may not need a button or a text file anymore. I don't need those two things, right? But at least I know how to do them, and I've demonstrated them with you. There's examples of how to do that stuff. In the future, we're going to modify our template to add in a preloader. So I'm going to make another template online, right? Where I'll share with you. I'll make a preloader, and with a different kind of, it'll look a little different than what it looks like now. Okay, and we're going to add more functionality to our template, so we don't have to add that again, because you'll see we'll be doing that again and again. Oh, let's modify our template and add this and this. And if we do that enough times, you know that it's time to create a new template, or add to the new, or make a version 2 of our draft. Any questions around this stuff? I know I went really, really fast for this one, but you have our template, and I wanted to demonstrate it for you, and I wanted to save it for you on YouTube, so you can look at this. And worst case scenario, you could probably recreate it yourself. Okay, and that's enough for now.